That leads to the second reality, that death is temporary. Without the resurrection, death is final, but because of the resurrection, death is temporary. Look at how Paul describes those who have passed away in verse 20. He says at the end, he calls them those who have fallen asleep. And he uses that word sleep a few times in this chapter. Consider the significance of that phrase, those who have fallen asleep. He's not softening death. You know, the way that we do, we talk about people who have passed away, people who are no longer with us. We soften it to make it a little bit more palatable because death is just so cold and so rigid and so cruel. But Paul isn't softening death when he says fallen asleep. He's redefining the term. For those who are in Christ, death is fundamentally changed. The resurrection changes everything. Death is temporary. For those who are in Christ, death is just a nap. Now, it's important to understand what this doesn't mean, because I've even been personally affected by sometimes a overly triumphant posture towards death. I mean, if you look down at verse 54 and 55, you're probably familiar with this phrase, death is swallowed up in victory. O death, where is your victory? O death, where is your sting? It's often a triumphant, defiant chorus that we sing in the face of death. But if you look at verse 54, Paul says, when the perishable puts on the imperishable, he's talking about the future resurrection, then shall come to pass the saying that is written. He's saying this chorus of defiant singing in death's face is a reality in the future that we will sing. Now, the reason why that's important is for you who are grieving, or you who feel death's sting, you've lost someone recently, or you're dealing with loss in different ways, it can be tempting to think that you need to scream this in the face of your losses. But Paul says, no, that is coming one day when Jesus returns. We can grieve. Paul says we grieve, but we grieve with hope. And so the beauty of the resurrection, the beauty of the gospel is that it holds space for honesty in the face of death's sting and hope that it will one day lose its sting. I mean, think about Jesus in John 11 at the tomb of Lazarus. He knows resurrection is coming, and yet, what does he do? He weeps. Resurrection makes space for honesty, but also drives us to hope. Because, as Paul says, for those who are in Christ, death is temporary. Death without the resurrection is a period. It ends the sentence. It ends the story. But the resurrection turns that into a comma. It's a pause. It stings, but death is not the end of the story. Death is temporary. Healthcare, the anti-aging industry, hundreds of billions of dollars promise what only the resurrection can guarantee. Death will be swallowed up. It's temporary.